All right, let's talk about Apple. You probably think you know the story of its incredible success, but what we're going to dig into today is the other side of that coin, the story of near total collapse, of bitter rivalries, and how the company we know today was almost completely wiped out. So let's pull back the curtain on one of the greatest corporate dramas of all time.
To really get a sense of just how dominant Apple is today, just look at this number. That's Apple's annual revenue. It's a figure so massive it dwarfs the economies of entire countries. Right now, Apple isn't just a company, it's a global economic force. It seems absolutely unbreakable. But believe me, it wasn't always this way.
And that's really the core question of this whole explainer, isn't it? How does a company that basically defines modern technology, that sits on mountains of cash, have a past that brought it right to the edge of disappearing forever? Well, to understand that, we have to go back to what was, for them, the beginning of the end.
So, our story kicks off in a time of incredible triumphs that soured fast. A time when Apple had the world at its feet but was about to lose its way. And it all started with the departure of its famous co-founder. I mean, with that legendary 1984 Super Bowl ad, Apple didn't just sell a computer, they sold a full-blown revolution. The Macintosh was this tool of liberation, right? A stand against some dystopian conformist future. It was the absolute peak of Apple's creative genius, a moment that defined a generation. But inside the company walls, a very different kind of war was brewing. Now, what's so fascinating here is the fundamental conflict this represents. On one side, you've got Steve Jobs, the brilliant, product-obsessed, but let's face it, often difficult visionary. And on the other, John Sculley, the seasoned marketing CEO that Jobs himself had recruited from PepsiCo. See, where Jobs wanted to make technology accessible for everyone, Sculley, the pragmatist from the world of soda, was laser-focused on high profit margins. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a battle for the very soul of the company. And this is how it all fell apart. The whole power struggle just exploded in 1985. Jobs, feeling like his creation was being completely mishandled, tried to oust Sculley, but the board sided with the experienced CEO. Jobs was stripped of his duties, basically exiled within his own company. So he did the only thing he really could. He resigned, taking some of Apple's best people with him to start a new company called Next. Just like that, the visionary was gone. So with Jobs out of the picture, Apple entered what a lot of people call its wilderness years. The company that once sold this clear, focused revolution suddenly had no idea what it was anymore. Without its visionary, Apple just started to drift, leading to this period of, well, total chaotic decline. And this list just illustrates the problem perfectly. Without Jobs' singular, focused vision, Apple became everything and nothing. It just chased trends, launching this dizzying array of products that had almost nothing to do with its core mission. Digital cameras, video game consoles, the product line was an absolute mess. Even the Macintosh itself became this confusing jumble of different models that nobody could figure out. The company had totally lost its way. But the rot wasn't just on the surface with confusing products. Oh no, it went deep, right into the company's technical core. While the outside world was seeing all these weird products, inside, the next generation Mac operating system, codenamed Copeland, was completely collapsing. It was a classic case of just trying to do way too much. It promised everything but failed spectacularly, leaving the Mac way behind its competitors. So, the result of all this chaos was, well, pretty predictable. Cheaper PC clones running Microsoft Windows were just eating Apple's lunch. Sales plummeted, the stock price tanked. By 1996, the situation was absolutely dire. Apple, the company that started the personal computer revolution, was hemorrhaging money and was rumored to be just months away from going bankrupt. But just when it seemed like all was lost, a desperate, last-ditch effort set the stage for one of the most incredible comebacks in the history of business.
Okay, so here's how it happened. That failure of Copland forced Apple to look outside for a new operating system. And in a kind of ironic twist, their choice came down to two companies run by former Apple execs. But in the end, they chose Next Step. And by buying Next, they didn't just get a new OS, they got their founder back. Steve Jobs returned, at first just as an advisor, but it wasn't long before he was running the whole show again.
And his impact was immediate. This wasn't just some ad campaign. This was a declaration of war on mediocrity. Think Different was Steve Jobs rebooting Apple's soul. He was reminding the world, and more importantly, his own employees, what Apple was all about.
It was a return to that rebellious, world-changing spirit that had been lost for over a decade. And the proof, as they say, was in the numbers. After years of losing tons of money, in Jobs' very first year back in charge, Apple turned a profit of $309 million. It was a stunning turnaround, for sure, but it was really just the beginning. So, with the company stabilized, Jobs and his team started the work that would not only save Apple, but completely redefine our relationship with technology forever.
I mean, just look at this incredible run. It started with the iMac in 1998, which made computers cool again. Then the iPod, which totally changed the music industry. The iPhone, which created the modern smartphone as we know it. And the iPad, which launched a whole new category of computing. Each one was a total game changer, all built on the foundation of that next operating system that had saved the company. But, creating these products was unbelievably difficult. The pressure was just immense. This quote actually comes from a meeting in 2006 when a prototype of the iPhone was failing miserably in a demo for Jobs. And instead of one of his famous screaming fits, Jobs was just quiet. And that silence was terrifying, because everyone in that room understood the stakes. The entire future of the company was riding on them getting this product right. So why was it so important? Well, because the iPhone wasn't just an act of creation. It was an act of self-destruction. Jobs could see the future. He knew that one day some company would put a great music player inside a cell phone, and the iPod, Apple's cash cow, would be toast. His strategy was simple. Apple had to be the company that killed the iPod. They had to disrupt themselves before a competitor did it for them.
After Steve Jobs' tragic death in 2011, the question on everyone's mind was, could Apple possibly survive without its visionary? Well, the answer came in the form of a very, very different kind of leader.
You see, Steve Jobs was the inventor. Tim Cook is the operator. Where Jobs was all about showmanship and product genius, Cook is a master of the supply chain, of logistics, of just execution. One executive described his style as grind, 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 grind. He wasn't the guy who could dream up the iPhone, but he was exactly the guy who could figure out how to build and sell hundreds of millions of them, turning Jobs' vision into the most valuable empire on the planet.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Warren Buffett, one of the world's most respected investors, said it all. Cook's genius isn't in product design, it's in understanding the incredibly complex global machine of manufacturing, politics, and finance that you need to run a company the size of Apple. He really was the perfect successor.
But that kind of massive success brings a whole new set of challenges. Today, Apple has to navigate a really complex world. There's pressure from the right to repair movement, these ongoing debates about user privacy, battles with governments over encryption, and a heavy reliance on a global supply chain that's centered in China. You can add to that increasing antitrust scrutiny and criticism from some users about software quality, and you see that, being on top is its own kind of struggle.
Which leaves us with this one final question. If the first age of Apple, under Jobs, was all about breathtaking invention, and the second, under Cook, was about perfecting and scaling that invention into a global empire, what comes next? What's going to define the third age of Apple? Well, that's the story that's still being written, and the whole world is definitely watching. Thanks for joining me.